I guess the first question in my mind is, I know that you've been intimately involved in the acquisition transformation. Mm-hmm. And so if it's okay, can we start there to really kind of decompose what Secretary Mink was focused on? What was your advice? And then what do you think the one or two primary critical issues will be that you take away from that to drive down through your DRPM programs?
Right. So I think, first of all, Jim, thanks for having me here today. It's great to be here again. Yeah, so the transformation piece, I mean, there's a lot of layers to it. I think that what he talked about early on, specifically as it relates to the authorities, is first and foremost. And we like to just kind of flow right through and say, well, we're going to give people more authority, right? But we don't really get into the details. And I'll tell you some of the details we talk about is we have a team of folks that are digging through, looking to understand exactly what the PEOs need to be able to execute more agilely and be able to get capability out to the field. We started with contracting, we've moved to airworthiness, we're looking at engineering, we're looking at financial management, we're looking at the OT&E and the hiring practices, right? So breaking down each and every single function to make sure we completely understand, number one, what we can delegate, right. Number two, what we cannot delegate, and number three, what we need to change at the more senior level to make sure that we can continue to execute at a rate that's consistent with relevance. And I think that's key. The next piece, and this is where I probably live, I mean, I understand the mechanical aspects of what it is we're trying to do, but we talk about culture, right? And it's interesting. We just say, hey, we're going to change the culture. Effective immediately, the culture is hereby changed, right? And as all of you know, that works magically. Well, here's the culture. As a senior leader, the Secretary of the Air Force, the Secretary of War, myself, General Gutlein, all of the senior leaders that are in the acquisition enterprise, we'll set the conditions. Change happens at the PAE and lower level. You have to own it. You want to know what's different this time? This time I'm telling you I'll set the conditions for you to execute. Now go execute. So what does that mean for us? It's exactly what Secretary Mink said. The first time they fail, we can't bash them on the head for leaning too far forward, right? Yes, sir. You know, the thing is I always tell folks, you know, they say, well, tell me about risk. You tell me to take risk. I don't understand what that means. Well, let me tell you what that means, right? It means that you can take calculated risks. You can fail forward, but you don't fail recklessly. And if you don't know the difference between the two, you probably shouldn't be in your job, right? So being able to characterize that. So it's that making sure they have the authorities, understanding what culture means. In this case, it means it's you driving change, and then getting into the eaches of what authorities exactly we need and how we're going to execute those.
And a stupid question, sir. One of the things I found most interesting from Secretary Mink was you've done with the PAs exactly differently than any other services. The Army's pulled them all up into like super PAs. You've pushed them down into, I think it's 18 Blue Air Force, and then another, I think, like 9 for the Space Force. Is this consistent with what presumably you're going to say, hey, I'm super concentrating decision into one belly button, right, number one, and number two, I'm presuming it's going to be a tremendous premium on talent management, in other words, hand-picking people for those jobs.
Yeah, like any mission of this magnitude, the power is still in the people, right? If you don't have the people and the leaders to do this, transformation is just essentially just talk. And so we've spent an enormous amount of time making sure we understand who we're putting in what job, how their talents, their skill set and experience aligns to that job, and then being able to giving them the freedom of maneuver and empower them. One of the other things we've looked at as directed by the Secretary of War, Secretary Hegseth, is how do you keep people in place longer, right? It's not unheard of to promote folks in place and allow them to stay a longer period of time. So for example, if you had someone who was a very young colonel that was maybe a BG select, you put them in to a PEO job, they could go in as a 1-star, freshly pinned on 1-star, right, get promoted to 2-star, and then you don't necessarily leave that job until we select you for a nominated position, which is 3-star, right? That's a very different approach. It's always been, hey, you go there for 2 years and then we move you. You go there for 2 years, we move you. That has not always served us well. It's not always been a failure, but it has not always served us well. And so now we're looking at exactly what Secretary Hegseth, Secretary Feinberg have talked about, is getting that level of continuity. When you get someone in there and it's working well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Understood. Yes, sir.
General, good to see you again. When I look at your overall responsibilities, portfolio, your DERPM is different than other folks' DERPM. General Gutlein has Golden Dome. It is a thing. The sub guy has subs. It is a thread. You have a collection of different platforms that have to interoperate with a whole host of different types of systems. So, for instance, I was shocked that you didn't get nuclear command and control because some of your platforms are violently dependent on that capability. How does that type of difference affect your thinking, and how do you work the seams?
Yeah, first of all, good to see you, Al. When you think about just the entire magnitude of the programs and the span of what they control, and so for F-47, we have the family of systems. Right. For B-21, we have the family of systems. For Sentinel and Minuteman, we're still working through what that family looks like. And so we are very cognizant of those gaps and seams that are created by these programs because, as everyone knows, I can deliver the hardware and the capability, but if I don't have the NC3, the assured comms to be able to execute, then I haven't really done a whole lot for the nation. And so I'm working very closely with Admiral Carell as well as General Davis, making sure we understand where those gaps and seams are, how we manage across those, and what things literally should fall under me to make sure that we don't overlook something. And so it very much drives the way I think, right? And you didn't ask this question, but I often just answer the question I want to answer. But just the breadth of the different programs, right? A lot of it has to do with Secretary Mink talked about. We spend a lot of time, B-21. I was on the ground floor of that program. F-47, CCA, all those programs were. I was on the ground floor with a great team. How do we take those lessons and apply them to whether it be a VC-25 or a Sentinel program that's coming right out of Nunn-McCurdy? And so some programs, and this is what I tell folks, some programs are just so critically important that we don't have time to wait for acquisition transformation to take hold. We need to parachute in right now and get after it. And they've given me both the authority and the top cover to do that. And Secretary Feinberg and I work very closely on this. I'm very communicative with him on things that we're doing, how we're doing it. And just flattening that chain of command has made a tremendous impact.
Hey, sir, GI here. It's really good to see you again. I'm going to flip it just a slight difference. We're talking about what we're doing with acquisition transformation, all the things we need to get after problem solving. There also is a conversation of the intersection of the defense industrial base. You talked about warfighter. Mm-hmm. How about for the group that's here today, your message to them on how they are really required to help step up in order to do the things the Secretary talked about with production and production rates going up?
Yeah, so many of you I know very, very well, and I've worked with over the years, and in my mind, it's simple, right? When you think about the threat to the nation, and I will tell you, I don't believe that war is inevitable, but I will tell you, when you look at the threat environment we're in right now, I remind my teams all of the time, militaries don't go to war, nations do. And if you look at the history of World War II, we won that. We won that because of our ability to productionize this nation. And so what we have to do is we have to have an industrial base that will put their badges on the table and say, I will do what it takes to get it done. And I think we went through a period of time where we didn't have that threat environment. And I will tell you, you could see the differences between what was happening in the boardroom versus the shop floor, mm-hmm. right? And we all know what I'm talking about. Yep. But as the threat environment increases, if we lose, you lose. Your children suffer, my children suffer, right? We don't lose as a military. We lose as a nation. And so we need an industrial base that is bought in on that strategy. And I will tell you, for my 30 years doing this, the majority of the time in the partnerships I've built with industry, I have no doubt they will drop their badges on the table and they'll be there to deliver like they have time and time again. The difference this time is I just question whether or not we have the time, right? Do we have the time to position ourselves? And Secretary Feinberg is so laser focused on getting our industrial base on a wartime footing. And the reason for that is just making sure that we don't get caught not ready to be able to deliver and answer the call. And so I will tell you that if it was one thing, GI, that's what I would say, is this is a partnership. And I'll tell you, you can, I was speaking, I won't even tell you what company it was. I was speaking at one of the company's events recently. And back when I was a young colonel, my program manager counterpart was in the crowd. I had obviously moved up the chain a little bit. He had as well. But I use an example in that session about how he and I were inseparable. And that partnership we had. And so we have to train our program managers to be able to understand that this is a team sport. There's no us and them. There is a business component, a business foundation of this, but at the end of the day, we are all after the same thing. And that's getting mission capability in the field and getting this nation ready. Again, war is not inevitable, but deterrence is not cheap.
Thanks, General White.
You bring up an excellent position, sir. You're going to punch me for asking. Did you get input into which programs got put in your DRPM portfolio?
I will say I was part of the discussion, but I probably, it's fair to say I was not the decision-making.
Yes, sir.
And it's interesting, there's a lot of conversation about which programs really need that level of interaction. And I'm going to take this again a little bit different direction.
Yes, sir.
Most of you who know me is I'm very hands-on, some would call a blue-collar general, right? And so one of the things I'll tell you is I don't see this position that I am in as so much as an oversight decision-making capacity. I am in an execution capacity with decision-making authority.
Yes, sir.
Right, so that's very, very different. If you look at the enterprise and how we're set up, and you want to talk about transformation, there are decisions that have taken months to get through the system that recently we've made inside of an hour.
Okay.
Right? And that's because we're in that execution capacity function. So I didn't get a lot of say, but I will tell you there was a lot of input in determining which ones they were and why they felt they needed to be part of my portfolio.
Well, I can certainly see the F-47 from your PEO. I certainly see your experience. I think you were back when the B-21, the RZO. It's a question looking back, I guess. What worked so incredibly, this is pre-acquisition reform, right? What was so incredibly critical? Was it the government reference architecture? Was it you driving the software? What caused those programs to be as close as I could see on time and on schedule at this point in time?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, we got the partnership with the operator correct. The operator was completely integrated with us. They were part of the family, both on F-47 and B-21 for me, which I was on the ground floor with both, as you well know, Jim. The second part is the partnership with industry. Understanding going into those programs that this is a no-fail mission, the nation's counting on us, and we're going to deliver no matter what. And the third piece is getting the resourcing component of that accurate. Now, on F-47 and B-21, I started B-21 with a great team of folks. Was on the ground floor of that, the way we set that up. And I took the lessons learned from that, and you look at F-47 and just understanding the government needed to get in the ground floor. We needed to bring the government back into engineering, which is something many of you know. We had outsourced engineering for so long. And so being able to do that, actually having a government reference architecture in partnership with industry, right? We're not cutting industry out saying, hey, this is how we're going to do it, figure it out. No, we brought industry in, we worked very closely with them. And I think building on that, and that allowed us to have, number one, continuous competition, avoided vendor lock, but at the same time, we now have a construct by which we can evolve capability, right? The old saying goes is everything back in the 80s and 90s was built to last. Now it's built to evolve. The thread is continuously moving, right? And I think that's critically important. And so really focused on those things. And again, I'm going to foot stomp that partnership with industry, right? Because as the acquirer, this idea that you're the business side of the Air Force or the business side of the defense industrial complex, it really does not set well with me. Acquisition is absolutely a warfighting function. And I tell folks, if you don't believe me, stop delivering. But one of the things that I think is really critically important is the acquirer and the engineer sit right between industry and the operator, right? And so you bring those teams together you come up with better solutions. You know, I've said it in open forum several times. You know, the AOAs that we do take so long and they're so complex. You know, I have found that industry really values concept refinement better because they're an integrated part of what we do.
Right.
Right? And it's very interactive on, hey, I'm asking you a question about what can you do, how quickly you can do it, and how affordable can you make it. Those conversations are completely interactive and they go on for an extended period of time before we collapse onto requirements that we go and actually chase something, which essentially I just described how we did CCA.
Yes, sir.
General, I'm going to ask a slightly different question, and this one I'm getting beaten up by Arun Seraphin, the former SASC professional staffer. No doubt we have remarkable young and medium-aged folks, both military and civilian, in our department. But we've seen a pretty good exodus of senior talent over the last year as people took the buyout and things like that. How do we think about restructuring our relationships with people, both in government and out of government, to be more effective as a whole?
Yeah, no doubt. We've gone through a tremendous amount of stress with the workforce, but I will tell you, there's also been some goodness come from that in terms of understanding exactly what we have to do to stand up this enterprise. And so we did have some tremendous loss of some really strong people, many of which were close to the retirement age at any rate, but at the same time, where we're really focused on now is a couple things. Number one, what do we need to do to incentivize the workforce, specifically as it relates to civilians, to make them want to stay in? Right? How do we compete? Some of the things we're looking at on Sentinel, for example, are what incentives can we use? What signing bonuses can we use? So we talk a lot about what happened as the administration came in, but we don't talk about a lot of the tools we've been given.
Okay.
Right? So the ability to have incentives, the ability to have signing bonuses to bring folks in and rebuild that foundation of that workforce, the long-term workforce. And so we're exercising all of those. Our hiring authorities are strong right now. We're moving out very quickly. We're moving out very precisely. Now, on the military side, I will tell you, if you talk to engineers, you go circa 10 years ago, and you know this, Al, engineers come in to do oversight. Military engineers don't want to do oversight. No. Military engineers want to do engineering. Right? And so one of the things we've really focused on is twofold. Number one, let engineers do engineering, bring engineering back into the government, right? And number two, remind them. Acquisition is a warfighting function, and you don't deliver capability to operators or to warfighters. You deliver capability to operators because you are a warfighter.
Right.
And it changes the culture and the mindset of how they look at what they're doing. They're inspired to deliver something, not innovation theater, but to solve an operational problem. That's something we typically have not given our engineers and our program managers. What we do is we tell them, go build me an acquisition strategy, get me to a milestone B, get me to a production decision.
Right.
What I want my acquirers and my engineers to think about is what operational problem are you trying to solve? How urgent is it? And how quickly can you get there? Those are the things that we're really working on. It is a very different culture in terms of being outcome focused. Don't get me wrong. Contracts, milestones Bs, milestone Cs, all critically important. But the means to an end is getting that capability out to the field, right? And that's a different mindset, a different culture set. Can we get that to spread? I believe we can. But we're pushing that down and allowing them to own it. And again, the challenge for Secretary Mink, myself, General Gutlein, all the other senior leaders, Bill Bailey, is when they lean forward too far and they fall over, pick them up, dust them off, and get them back in the fight. We don't crush. Again, you can fail forward, you just don't fail recklessly.
Right.
Thank you.
One thing I wanted to do, sir, is make sure we give you as much time as possible. So we got you up early, and if it's okay with you, we're going to give you a few minutes at the end.
Sure.
I know once we turn it over to the audience, which will be just in a second or two,
Okay.
You're going to be peppered with program questions. What the B, 25% of the B, 21.
Sure, yeah.
So number one, get your questions ready. And number two, you've touched on something that I thought was very important. For those of you who cannot see it, by the way, when he's done, before they shut his down, you've got to get a picture of his logo. I want to know who did that. it is for as much as you hate the DERPM, sir, that is an incredibly warlike DERPM logo.
There was a
you have.
lot of thought and meaning that went into that. I won't go into detail here, but there's a lot of meaning that goes into
You haven't
that.
showed that to General Gutlin or Admiral Gauscher, have you?
Oh, you're the first to see it, Jim.
Yes, sir. Let me, as we,
It's up on the screen.
oh, yeah, there it is. Yes, sir. Before, I guess the question I would ask, all joking aside, is I know you don't like the term DERPM, and now that you've been pulled up to be this super creature, this kind of alien that lives in the planet that comes down to punish the little Lilliputians when they do bad things, where do you spend your time? How do you interject yourself into the key decisions? How do you, I noticed Fatih Osman from SNC's over there, he's got SAOC, right? When you see something in one of his programs that doesn't interface well with your program, how are you injecting yourself into these decisions, and really what should industry be expecting?
Yeah, so I think what industry should be expecting, and a few of you have already met with me and seen very, very hands-on. We're not going to sit around and wait for decisions to be made. We're going to move out on decisions. That's what I've been asked to do. I've been given the authority and the resources to do it, and I would be a fool not to be able to deliver on that. You asked me where I spend my time.
Yes, sir.
It's simple. And the logo actually represents a big portion of this. I spend my time building relationships.
Okay.
The reason I don't like the term DERPM is not because of the name, because it puts this enormous amount of focus on a single individual, like one person is going to change the world. This just in. It's going to take everybody. I mean, you've seen my portfolio.
Yes, sir.
I'm not just going to wake up one day and walk into Sentinel and say, there you go, it's fixed, right? No, what it's about, and the way I have chosen to run my DERPM ship, for a lack of a better term,
Yes, sir.
is about partnering. It's about being close to Admiral Carell at STRATCOM, being close to General Davis at Global Strike Command for both B-21 and Sentinel. It's about the relationship that I have with Secretary Mink, about the mere fact that when the discussion came up of where I would sit, I sit on the 4th floor, just a couple of doors down from Secretary Mink, right? That's the level of relationship I have. I report directly to Secretary Feinberg. Strong, but my idea going into this was not to try to go around the system, to work within the system as much as I can, and everything I do is in partnership with the current Air Force acquisition structure, right? And if anything, one of the questions I believe I saw was, what does it look like? What does success look like?
That's right.
When you see what you're able to do, if you bring down some of the bureaucratic walls, what is actually possible? Get the rest of the system to adopt. The ideal world would be you don't need a DERPM.
Right.
That's the ideal world because we operate that way continuously. So my focus is very much on integration over independence.
Right.
You have to be careful with the amount of authority that I've been given. You could weaponize that, and that is certainly not the choice I've chosen. In fact, I choose to use the authorities only when and if I need to. The majority of the time, I have found the system is willing to bend and work with me to be able to make sure we get what we need to get done.
Yes, sir. I think we've got 15, 20 minutes if you...
Okay, get your flaming arrows ready.
Yes, sir. So,
Oh, there we go.
there's already people up. I'm sorry, sir. I thought I was setting the stage. Go ahead, sir.
I don't want to interrupt you, Jim. General, congratulations on your promotion. And by the way, I just love what you just got through saying. It's not about you, it's about the team. Fantastic. So I'm part-time faculty with Virginia Tech. I'm wondering, what are the problems that you're seeing that you need help figuring out, especially from the integration of people problem?
Help me understand what you mean by integration of people.
I'm leaning in toward human-centered design, how humans interact with each other, how you build a stronger team by taking advantage of social science learning that we've been able to take advantage of, although maybe not as fully as we could, over the recent past.
Yeah, so I thought that's what you meant, and I won't disagree. I think one of the most important things is understanding the culture by which some of these programs are being executed in. I'll give you Sentinel as a perfect example, coming right out of a Nunn-McCurdy, very challenging environment, very different space in terms of how they think, understanding the human dynamics of that environment, and how do you step in externally, brand new, right? And being able to affect that, be able to affect the culture of the organization and the human dynamic that's been created by that. And then secondarily, something exactly the opposite when you go to an F-47 that's a much younger program, hasn't experienced the challenges. And so we do spend a lot of time understanding the human dynamic piece of that, how the organizational structure works, whether or not it works, and what things we can do to be able to make it effective. So I spent a lot of time understanding how each of the organizations and the PAEs are structured before I ever stood up a DERPM structure. I was given an authority to get quite a few personnel. And so when I have a transition lead who's a colonel, she's amazing. And when we started standing up the team, I told her, okay, here's the deal. As we stand up the staff, no more than 20. And she was like, what do you mean no more than 20? I'm like, there's probably 10,000 people that work these programs. We don't need any more than 20. We're at 24 right now, and we don't plan on growing. That includes all support staff, aides, execs, executive assistants, everything. The idea is not to recreate the bureaucracy of which we're trying to overcome. And that was the most important human dynamic we had to understand, right? When they saw the size of the staff, they understood that I was going to leverage them, their expertise, and their voice to make decisions to ensure execution. And so that's from the top down. Interaction amongst, inside these organizations, I think largely has just been a key focus on how you evolve the functional management strategy and approach that are used inside these program offices, while at the same time empowering the PAEs. I know that's very tactical, but that's really the foundation of how we're looking at transformation. We're looking at all the functional authorities and activities that are happening, how much we can put that into the PAEs and give them greater freedom of maneuver. A lot of time spent on the structure piece. Hopefully that's helpful.
There's two in the back, sir.
I love those lights.
My staff told me they'd be blinding.
They are definitely blinding.
I dismissed them, right? And I suddenly realized they weren't blinding.
So I got to know whoever asks a hard question, I won't be able to see him and
Yes,
know to
sir.
be mad at him.
I see Jeff back there and Sam's over there. Go ahead, guys.
Hello, General. Gary Dean. I'm the president of Peduzzi Associates Limited. You know, over the years, as we've transitioned from fourth generation aircraft to fifth generation, you know, earlier we were talking about sustainment challenges that we face as we get into this high technology of integrating software with hardware. Can you tell us about what can industry do better to kind of help out as we move into the F-47 and some of these other high-end programs? How can we work better together on this side of it so as we get into operations that we can get, I think we heard things like 55%. And it's not that industry is say, underperforming. I just think we have to work better on the front end of this together on how we can, as the F-47, maybe we can have that be at 75, 85%. If we work through some of those difficult challenges now of the lessons that we've learned from the F-35, can you just comment on that, maybe what we can do better together?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, industry was a key part of building the foundational architecture by which we define the government reference architecture, which is really, really key. And I think being able to understand that, to be able to interoperate with this platform, and by the way, the AMS-GRA is proliferated just not just inside the United States, but we've actually pushed it to other places as well. And so because, as you know, it's at a lower classification level. The biggest thing from industry is just understanding that interface. I think we have a consortium that has, I don't even know how many people are in it now, but understanding what that interface is, how you play with that interface, and making sure everything you do basically is compliant with that standard and that approach. And again, it's a shared architecture in a sense that industry was a part of building it, a large swath of industry. So that's number one. That's on the software side. Number two, on the hardware side, I think it's exactly what the Secretary said. We have to be mindful of the challenges we have with the supply chain that in these platforms, and especially we're not building a fleet of 1,000 like we did F-16. How does that change the way we think about sustainment? So we brought in sustainers early on, just like on B-21. We had them in the very beginning, making sure we understood exactly what the challenges were on the flight line, which is very different. And then making sure industry understands what we're trying to do, how we're trying to do it. You know, what does it mean to be an everyday flyer was one of the comments we always talked about on B-21. What does it take to sustain something like that? And I think that's critical. I'm cautious to ever compare us to F-35 because the program is so different in terms of the international partners, the joint nature, the many different requirements. So we don't have the same set of challenges because we have just that single platform as it is. So by and large, I think really it's just the key communication, but from a software perspective, is just understanding that architecture and understanding that's going to be the foundational to our future. It's the architecture we use on CCA, we use on F-47, the other services are leveraging it, and so you're going to see more of it, and we'll continue to evolve that architecture as a function of time with interactive nature with industry.
Right here, General.
Hi, Stephen Losey, Air and Space Forces Magazine. Thank you for doing this, General. Congressman Whitman this morning referred to the F-47 not being available until the mid-2030s. You said in February that it's still on track for a 2028 first flight. Mm-hmm. Has anything changed on timing on that in the last couple of weeks? And can you provide any more context to the mid-2030s date Congressman Whitman mentioned? Is that IOC, combat capability, or something else?
Yeah, I won't go into too much detail for classification reasons, but I will tell you, I mean, the first flight has not slipped. We're exactly where we said we're going to be in 2028. In fact, we're trending very positively at this point. That first flight is then when you start pushing the aircraft into obviously the regular reps and sets of doing testing and things of that nature. And so we haven't gone, I know he said mid-2030s, we'll just leave it at that for this setting. We'll just leave it at that for this setting. and we can take a question for the record as well, and I'll have my team get back with you.
General White, Thomas DeVelli with Defense One. Thank you again for your time. I've got a question and a follow-up. Last week, a B-21 Raider was spotted completing key refueling-related exercises. It's a notable step in the ongoing test campaign. At the same time, the use of heavy and stealth bombers in Iran has significantly increased. Just out of curiosity, is the war in Iran adding pressure to accelerate the timeline to field B-21? Follow-up to that is, recently a top commander said that we may have a 90-year-old tanker refueling a B-21. Does the B-21's rapid progress underscore the need for a next-gen refueler?
Wow.
He had to read 7 pages, sir. I was standing here watching him flip through each one of them.
It's hard to believe I get paid for this. I won't go into operations as it relates to Iran. That is obviously not my place. I'll defer to those who do that for a living. But I will tell you this, and I've said this from day one since I was a brand new colonel in the B-21 program. You couldn't put any more pressure on that program. That is a no-fail mission. We will get it done on time, on target. We have continuously put our best people on it, from the test community to the program managers to the engineers and to our industry partner. So there is no event in the world that's providing any greater pressure than the pressure that that team puts on itself. In terms of the 90-year-old taker problem, does it put any? No, I don't think it does. I think that you look at the tankers they were referring to, and then you look at where we're at with some of the KC-46 as we continue production and fielding those capabilities. And so we will continue down, as General LaMontagne recently said, we're getting RVS fixed, we're getting capability out there. We'll continue to proliferate the KC-46 into the system. And we'll fly KC-135s. They continue to be safe and ready platforms. And so.
Good morning, General. This is Todd South with Air and Space Forces Magazine. I'm curious, there's initial plans to eventually purchase between 1,000 and 2,000 CCAs. I know that there's about 100 possibly ready for production by 2029. Is there any plan or interest in increasing or speeding up that process for producing or acquiring more CCAs?
Yeah, so we're actually going through that right now. The A57 is looking at the production path that we're on. The program has just gone so exceptionally well, number one, with the partnership we've had with in all of industry, by the way. This has been very different. This has been I would argue that CCA has been a real national lift. And so right now, our A57 requirements leads are really looking at what is the right number. We have a production number that we're marching towards. How do you scale that, or do you start looking closer at an increment 2 and trying to make sure, again, where we're focused at is what operational problem. Right now, we have increment 1 in a very good place. It's ready. It's getting ready for production. We're getting testing aircraft, as you know, testing autonomy. And so just the question is how much you want to ramp and scale the increment 1 above the baseline, if we do at all, and then how do you kind of walk your way into increment 2 and what that looks like and the scalability. And when you think about the time gap between those 2 increments from a production perspective, would you be better off scaling greater? And so those are some of the questions that the A57 is wrestling with right now. And I think we'll get there probably by summer or late fall as we start walking through that.
Sorry, I see a question over here. And in the meantime, did you want to touch on, I leave this to your discretion. Did you want to touch on the 25% production capacity on the B-21 and perhaps what you may be thinking to do with the $2 billion of reconciliation funding for GBSD?
So I won't go into too much on Sentinel. We have a plan for the $2 billion, how we're going to execute that, and exactly what we're doing. I will say on Sentinel, post Nunn-McCurdy, what an amazing team. You know, I was parachuted in with my team who one of the things I did get to do, I got to choose my team. If I'm only going to have 20, I get to pick the 20, right? That's kind of the deal. Going in there, rolling up our sleeves, showing up, hey, we're here to help. What can we do, right? And what a team that has worked tirelessly getting this thing through Nunn-McCurdy. Just totally impressed. And then so the couple things we looked at, we reviewed the data with the entire team. The restructure will be done this year. We're confident of that. I know there were some discussions about it being in 2027. We've seen the data. We believe we're comfortable going. As the MDA, I can say you're on the path you need to be on. We'll complete the restructure in 2026. First pad launch in 2027. Admiral Carell, General Davis, and I all agree that based on what we have and where we're at on this program, we believe some initial capabilities in the early 2030s. So good progress getting that program kind of sorted and being able to march in the right direction. On the B-21, bottom line is 2 things. Number one, you get that 25% increase of capacity in terms of increasing rate. As you know, we have not publicly nor have we gone out and said anything different about the quantities. We've always stayed consistent with that, and we'll be that for the foreseeable future until the department comes together with a decision. That is a much larger decision that the department will work through, and we will work through it. But what that does is it does allow us that decision space that we didn't have before. And so a very sound investment keeps the program moving in the right direction. It allows greater decision space in terms of capacity and capability in the future. And so really excited about the partnership we have with Northrop Grumman and getting that done, because that was, yes, the contractor invested significantly as well on the CapEx side.
Sir, did you have one?
Yep. Hi, General. Frank Wolf, Defense
Frank.
Daily. Hi there. Yeah, just on CCA, as you're going through the numbers exercise right now, the 1,000 to 2,000, et cetera, what are your thoughts in terms of unit cost, what you'd like to see? There were previous numbers, the low end, $5 million up to 20, probably an F-16 unit cost. I wondered whether that's evolving in terms of what you would like to see in terms of unit cost and what industry should provide. So.
Yeah, no, I think it is evolving, Frank, and I'll tell you why it's evolving, is we're finding a greater understanding of the operational use for these platforms and capabilities. And so as we continue to explore the design space with these platforms, you know, how much they can do in lieu of a manned platform, et cetera, that really changes the landscape of how we view cost. And so we're in the early phases of that. We have, as you know, the experimental ops unit, which is going extremely well. They're working very closely with industry, making sure they understand the individual capabilities from the different industry partners, but then also the autonomy piece. What does that autonomy give you? How much flexibility? How much decision space does it give the commander on the ground? And so as we work through that, we're also working through what affordability looks like. Affordability in a sense of how expensive do you make these things in comparison to how much they can carry, how much gas they have, what range they have, the normal things you would struggle with on a manned platform. The difference is we put a set amount early on to make sure we didn't grow too quickly. And so far, we've stayed well within that. And so the question is, where do we go from here? And that's what the team is working through right now as we continue the testing.
So,
Frank's got a good deal on a microphone if you want to buy one.
I notice he keeps grabbing it, sir.
Brian
Bad, Frank, bad.
Brian Everstein with Aviation Week, wait, back here.
Brian.
The Air Force, especially under the last administration, raised a lot of concerns about stovepiping acquisition programs, not considering what one side is doing with the other. That led, obviously, to the creation of Integrated Capabilities Command. That's out the window now. When you look at your programs, how are you taking into account avoiding the possibility of being stovepiped? For example, on F-47, how are you taking into account what the Armament Directorate's doing, what NAVAIR is doing with weapons, with the Propulsion Directorate's doing on potential NGAP? Can you kind of talk about how you're bringing in what other entities are doing onto your programs?
Yeah, so that has, first of all, we've been very close with our Navy partners for a long period of time in terms of looking at the different platforms. And so integration, we're not stovepiped in a sense because the PAEs and PEOs work very closely together. And so, Brian, I'm trying to get after what angle you're looking at with this. I mean, we have strong integration, certainly from the platforms to the weapons, and certainly amongst platforms. We're spending a lot of time under this new construct, and this is something that a couple of the PAEs started well before transformation, is going more to a horizontal approach into how we deal. So, for example, if you have fighters, do you need a unique EW system for every fighter, or can you have an EW system that, from a form, fit, and function perspective, can go into any platform or fighter in terms of from a developmental perspective? So that integration is there. It's sounding well. Integration Capabilities Command, while the command itself may have gone away, the functions that exist are still alive and well inside the A57. Secretary Mink, there was a term for a while, I don't think it's a formal term, A57 next. How do you allow the A57 to take on those functions? And all the same players that were part of ICC are in there steering that. And so we've seen great integration, just understanding, hey, this is what we think. Acquires engineers, what do you think? And driving the integration at the corporate level. You make me think of something when the secretary early on and we talked about acquisition transformation. One of the things I said to him is, hey, you can't transform acquisition unless you transform the corporate process, the different aspects, the requirements piece, the resourcing piece. So we've spent a lot of time looking at that as well, and we've folded that into the acquisition transformation process, and it's moving along very well.
Sir, go ahead. You're back up.
General Marcus Weisgerber with the Wall Street Journal. I wanted to ask you about Air Force One. Is there anything you could share about the progress of the modification of those two planes, how Boeing is performing, and what changes you've made or directed since you've taken your role? Thank you.
So on VC-25B, I was well engaged on that program in my previous job. It's probably why it came with me. Significant progress. I will tell you that is a program that we got into a little requirements bind. And I think coming in and having a sit down even early on with some of the administration leadership, understanding where the gives and takes were on the requirement side of things, because we'd gotten to a place where FAA requirements said one thing, presidential requirements said another thing, and we were able to get to a place and settle some of those impasses. Not too different on some of the other programs I have. You find some of these derived requirements get to a place where they can't, they get hung and they can't get past it. We've spent a lot of time. I go down there once a month, look at the progress. They've done a significant amount of leadership changes there inside the program. Good progress. Just in the last probably year, we've been able to move the schedule back to the left significantly. And so we're continuing down that path. So very happy with how Boeing is starting to turn that around. We got a long way to go, but we're trending in the right direction.
Does it sound, not to steal his thunder, does it sound Trump's second term-ish achievable?
I think where we're at right now, that is currently where we're playing.
I do. Sir, good morning. Lance Van Zandt from Honeywell. This morning, Honorable Whitman started off by stating that he's with high confidence that the president is going to deliver a 1.5 trillion PB and that the HASC would mark to 1.5 trillion. It's remained to be seen what will happen with the appropriators. But let's say a 1.5 trillion budget comes to the department. Where do you see the priority of those investments? And also, like probably more importantly, how do you hedge against that tendency to not throw it into enduring programs because it's easier to invest the money in the time required or allowed?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, I will tell you the department has continued to have an enduring focus on the munitions piece. I don't see that changing. We're going to need to not only continue on the path that we're on. Secretary Feinberg has done a phenomenal job of building partnerships with industry, building business deals that actually scale our ability to deliver munitions in an effective timeline. And so the good news is we're going to get to a place where we can produce those. Now we have to be able to get the resourcing to be able to do so. So I think that's going to be a key area. The second area I think is going to be critically important is getting the resourcing required for readiness. Right? If you look at some of our most exquisite platforms, they are struggling, right, from a readiness perspective. And a lot of it has to do with the compounding impact over time of not funding them to the level we need to fund them to. And so the Air Force over the last couple of years is really starting to push that trend back in the right direction, but it's going to take some time. We have found places on some of our key platforms where you have a single supplier that is really struggling to keep up. And so we're looking at second sourcing. Some of these things are very, very challenging, but this is an opportunity to be able to go out and address those. The last piece I will tell you, as we bring on these new platforms, we're going to have to continue down the path of the infrastructure required to accept those platforms. And when you think about B-21, you think about F-47, you think about CCAs, there's infrastructure required to bring on these new platforms. We're spending a lot of time and energy to make sure we can address the resourcing aspects of that.
Yes, sir. But before I throw out the last one, are there any other questions from the audience? The good, I'm looking around, sir. The good news and the bad news, sir. So I know you don't like the DRPM, but you do work for the deputy.
I do, directly.
I know, but you do like the deputy. Let me make that clear.
I do like the deputy.
Yes, sir. The deputy is also driving forward on munitions. Mm-hmm. And given the recent developments and just the depth of the requirements for not just to replenish now, but also to prepare to deter a China fight. How do you coordinate with your boss on his priorities to make sure that every time there's a White House meeting that says, I need more munitions, accelerate the production capacity, that your CapEx isn't the bill payer, in other words, in terms of being shifted over, because the companies are now stuck in their 2026 guidance?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I don't dislike the DRPM. I dislike the nature that it points to a single person. Yes, I think the DRPM concept is phenomenal. I think the concept that Secretary Feinberg came up with and the way he and I work together is a model that I think is going to be something that we can use to actually transform acquisition. Yes, sir. I'm always cautious when you get to this place where you have an acronym that is going to save the world, right?
Yes, sir.
And so we have a great team of leaders that work these programs. And to suggest that I'm going to come in and just lean over and save the day is unreasonable. But what I am going to do is I'm going to provide them a level of freedom of maneuver and decision space that they've never seen before, and I'm going to empower them in ways that they never thought was possible. Yes, sir. That is my job. And so I wouldn't say go as far as saying I don't like the DRPM because that was Secretary Feinberg's idea, and I like anything he likes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that... So the answer to your direct question is actually quite simple. He is, number one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. His business mind is absolutely exceptional. That's number one. Number two, and in my 30 plus years of doing this, I have never seen anyone invest the time like he does. So I'll just give you an example. As a 3-star when I was a SAF AQ, rarely would you go downstairs to the 3rd floor in my previous life, or even as a 1-star to see, the senior leaders. With Secretary Feinberg, he's very inclusive, getting everyone in the room, embracing diversity of thought, understanding the challenges that have to be addressed, coming to consensus, or if not, making the tough decision. So if you talk about a budget situation where you come to me and say, I'm going to take X amount of money from your programs to be able to fund munitions, that decision is not going to be made in a vacuum. He's extremely thoughtful. He will sit down, we'll have a conversation, and we'll understand what risks we're taking. At the end of the day, everyone in this business, in this threat environment we're in right now, right here today, everyone understands all we're doing is understanding where we're going to take the risk.
Yes, sir.
And I will tell you, with Secretary Feinberg and Secretary Hegseth specifically, an exceptional job of evaluating that, getting the inputs, processing the information, and getting to a decision.
Yes, sir.
Right? And if you even look at the DERPMs, the way they're set up, the programs that they felt were most important or needed to be addressed, very thoughtful about how they did it and what the portfolios looked like, as we talked about earlier.
Yes, sir.
So.
And then just to close, before we put Mr. Ainsworth up on the stage right away, would you be offended if we put your DERPM back up again?
I'm not at all offended.
The takeaway I take away from that, sir, is that the warfighter is back in charge.
That is, so if you look at the blue represents that I am Air Force, the 4 stars for obvious reasons.
Yes, sir.
You look at the background, that's industry. You look at the 5 programs coming out the top.
Oh,
and you look at
the
Eagle's wings, they're breaking the bounds of the actual border, because that's what I expect people to do, break the bounds. And so that's some of the symbolism that went behind it. We had a very thoughtful group of people that are very motivated. A lieutenant colonel actually did that on his own.
Yes, sir.
And are the best. So I'll end with this. Thank you for the time this morning. I know we have Mr. Ainsworth coming up next. I appreciate what each and every one of you do, whether you're with industry or with the media, critically important. This is a time of great consequence. And just getting an opportunity to sit and have a conversation with each and every one of you, because I will tell you, now is the time where we should be talking about what we're doing as a nation as we go down this path. And I'm truly grateful with the teammates I have in this room. So thank you very much.
Hear, hear.